The gaslight flickered against the mahogany walls of the Henderson estate, casting dancing shadows across the twin portraits that dominated the parlor. Dr. Marcus Webb adjusted his spectacles and studied the two men seated before him. They were identical in every conceivable way, the same dark hair, swept back in fashionable waves, the same penetrating eyes, the same carefully groomed beard. Even their formal evening wear was matched to the smallest detail, yet something unsettled the good doctor, something he couldn't quite name. "Gentlemen," Dr. Webb began, setting down his leather medical bag with practiced care, "I must admit, your letter intrigued me greatly. It's not often I receive such unusual requests for consultation." The twin on the left, Theodore, according to the introductions, leaned forward slightly. "Dr. Webb, we appreciate your willingness to examine our case. Most physicians refuse to even listen. They call us frauds," added Thomas, the twin on the right, "or worse, they suggest we belong in an asylum." Dr. Webb had traveled from Richmond after receiving their carefully worded letter. The Henderson family was wealthy, influential, and above all, discreet. Their tobacco plantations stretched across 3 counties, and their word carried weight in Virginia society. But wealth alone hadn't drawn him here. It was their claim, their impossible, fascinating claim. "Tell me again," Dr. Webb said, pulling out his notebook. "In your own words, what exactly do you experience?" Theodore and Thomas exchanged a glance, one of those wordless communications that seemed to pass between them like electricity through wire. "We share sensations," Theodore said simply, "pain, temperature, even taste. When Thomas cuts his finger, I feel the blade. When I drink wine, he tastes it on his tongue." Dr. Webb had heard of such things in his studies. Ancient texts spoke of mystical connections between twins, folklore whispered of shared souls. But this was 1847, the age of rational thought and scientific method. Such claims belonged to superstition, not medical journals. "Demonstrate this for me," he requested. Thomas rolled up his sleeve and retrieved a small knife from his waistcoat pocket. Without hesitation, he made a shallow cut across his forearm. Blood welled up immediately. Theodore's face contorted in pain. He gripped his own arm in the exact same spot, though his skin remained unmarked. "Fascinating theater," Dr. Webb murmured, though his clinical detachment was wavering, "but hardly conclusive evidence." "We expected your skepticism," Theodore said, still clutching his arm. "That's why we've prepared something more, comprehensive." Thomas reached into a nearby drawer and withdrew a small vial of clear liquid. "Laudanum," he explained. "Apricisi does enough to cause drowsiness, but nothing dangerous." Before Dr. Webb could protest, Thomas uncorked the vial and swallowed its contents. The effect was almost immediate. Thomas's eyelids grew heavy, his posture relaxed, and his speech began to slur slightly. But what truly astounded Dr. Webb was watching Theodore undergo the exact same transformation, despite having consumed nothing. "Impossible," the doctor whispered. "We've lived with this connection our entire lives," Theodore said, his words now thick and drowsy. "Every injury, every illness, every sensation. When one of us falls ill, both suffer. When one heals, both recover." Dr. Webb spent the next 3 hours conducting every test he could devise. He had one twin taste bitter herbs while blindfolding the other. Both reacted identically. He applied heat to Thomas's hand and watched Theodore's face flush. With the same discomfort, he checked their pulses simultaneously and found them perfectly synchronized. As the laudanum wore off, both brothers gradually returned to normal alertness at precisely the same rate. "How long have you experienced this connection?" Dr. Webb asked, his scientific worldview crumbling with each observation. "Since birth," Thomas replied. "Our mother often told the story. She said that when I cried as an infant, Theodore would cry too, even if he was sleeping peacefully in another room. We learned to hide it early," Theodore added. "People react poorly to things they cannot understand. Our parents thought we were playing games. Teachers accused us of elaborate pranks. Only our family physician believed us, and Theodore paused. "He took his own life shortly after examining us. Left a note saying some mysteries were too terrible for human comprehension." Dr. Webb felt a chill run down his spine. He thought of his own reputation, his standing in the medical community. What would his colleagues say if he published a paper about telepathically connected twins? The ridicule would be swift and merciless. "Have you consulted with others? Surely some physician has documented your case." The twins shared another one of their silent communications. "We've tried," Thomas said sadly. "Dr. Hartwell from Baltimore examined us for 2 days, took extensive notes, then burned everything and refused to speak with us again. Dr. Morrison, from Charleston, spent a week studying us, became convinced we were genuine, then suffered what his family called a nervous breakdown. He now resides in a private sanitarium. The few who believe us," Theodore continued, "seem to lose their minds trying to understand how such a thing is possible, and those who don't believe simply dismiss us as clever charlatans." Dr. Webb closed his notebook with trembling hands. In his 30 years of medical practice, he had never encountered anything that challenged the natural order so completely. Every instinct told him to flee, to forget what he had witnessed, to return to the comfortable world of broken bones and fever treatments. But another part of him, the part that had driven him to become a physician, was fascinated beyond measure. "What do you want from me?" he asked quietly, understanding. Both twins said simultaneously, then looked surprised at their synchronized response. "We don't seek fame or fortune," Theodore clarified. "We simply want someone to acknowledge that we exist. But this connection, whatever it is real. We're not performers or fraudsters," Thomas added. "We're just two men trying to live ordinary lives with an extraordinary burden." Dr. Webb studied their faces in the flickering gaslight. He saw intelligence there, in sincerity, and something else, a deep, abiding loneliness. They were isolated by their very uniqueness, cut off from the normal human experience by the very bond that connected them so intimately to each other. "I believe you," he said finally. "God help me, I believe you completely." Relief flooded both their faces. "But I cannot publish your case," Dr. Webb continued. "The medical establishment isn't ready for such revelations. Perhaps it never will be." The twins nodded, understanding flickering in their identical eyes. "However," Dr. Webb said, reaching into his bag, "I can document everything. Every test, every observation, every detail. I'll create a complete record and seal it away. Perhaps someday, when science has evolved beyond its current limitations, someone will be ready to study cases like yours properly." He spent the rest of the night writing, filling page after page with meticulous observations. As dawn broke over the Virginia countryside, he sealed the documents in an envelope and handed it to Theodore. "Keep this safe," he said. "Your story deserves to be told, even if not in our lifetime." Dr. Webb left the Henderson estate that morning carrying a secret that would haunt him for the rest of his days. He never spoke publicly about the twins, never published his findings, never sought recognition for witnessing something that challenged the very foundations of medical science. But he never forgot them either. The twins lived quietly for many more years, their secrets shared only with a select few who could accept mysteries without demanding explanations. They found peace not in being understood by the world, but in understanding themselves and in knowing that at least one man of science had looked upon their impossible connection and seen not fraud or madness, but simply truth. Sometimes, the greatest discoveries are the ones we're not yet ready to make.